Zibbity bop. Welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, Gene.
And V. We interview people in the animation industry about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on Twitter if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Jim Mortensen.
Hey,
Howdy.
it's Jim.
Hey.
Hi. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thanks for coming on the show. You are a board artist. You are a director. You are a purple enthusiast.
Yes. Oh,
Would you say?
I would say enthusiast, maybe obsessive, maybe.
Okay. Well, we all have a color that everything on mine is all like orangey yellow. I think it kind of ties everything together. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
it's
anything
nice.
about branding.
Says the guy who actually has branded our show.
Oh, well, I don't know if I did a good job, but Jim, tell us who you are and what you do.
I am a supervising producer currently on Big Nate over at Nickelodeon. Before that, I started all the way back in boards. I came from boards at Nickelodeon for a number of years, then went to board directing on a board-driven show at DreamWorks, and then was a supervising director for a little bit, and then came back to Nickelodeon as a supervising producer.
Nice. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let's take it back first. I was gonna get too in the thick of it. Let's talk about Little Jim. Let's talk about Little Jim and how you got your start drawing and into animation and all that stuff.
Little Jim, Little Jim never really took drawing seriously. Like I'd always kind of drawn, but not really seriously or any sort of formal training. And I was always kind of good at computers, so I went to a school named High Technology High School, which kind of tells you what my course was going to be for a little while. And had never really taken it seriously until I was in engineering school and was working co-op jobs and doing like SQL programming at Cosmo.com and a bunch of like programming gigs. And really decided that I didn't like it and kind of had a life crisis, honestly.
Oh no.
And at 22, kind of reset my life. Went back to live home with my parents. Went to the local art school while I had kind of decided that I wanted to do cartoons, that I wanted to do animation. So I went to the local art school for my associates while taking classes at SVA. I was living in New Jersey at the time. That's where my parents were. So I was in New Jersey taking classes at the School of Visual Arts at nights and just constantly applying, trying to get into SVA, and then eventually did and got into the animation program.
Nice.
How many times did you try to get into SVA?
I tried 3 times. The first time was a total failure. The second time was a less total failure. And then the third time was barely almost a failure, but it worked.
That's just life, huh? That's just a series of failures until one that's not as much of a failure.
Until somebody takes a chance on you, and then you're in.
Pretty much.
I was going to ask, what are the requirements? Like, what is the application for SVA like?
Mostly life drawing portfolio. A little bit of, I think you had to do a self-portrait at the same time. But I was going to apply to Cal Arts too, but at the time the portfolio requirement said it requires laser copies of your portfolio, and I didn't know what the hell a laser copy was, so I ended up not applying to Cal Arts because I felt too stupid.
That's so funny though. Like, why is it so specific? I guess like laser copy just meant copy, right? Like now that you, right?
I guess so. I maybe it meant like a laser printout, or
Dude,
I don't know.
When I applied to my college, it was an art institute in Schaumburg, Illinois, and they asked for my portfolio on film negative, not even negatives. It's like the shit you put in slide projector slides.
Boy.
And I was like, what? Yeah, I'm not kidding. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And I don't remember if it was optional, but I'm trying to make the best submission I can. And so I had to figure out how to fuck to do that. And so I went to like a Wolf Camera or something and had to like ask them to do that. And in retrospect, I'm like, why the fuck was that necessary? Why the hell? Like, who is plugging my portfolio slides into a projector? Like, anyway.
That's so funny. Like the committee, like the judging committee.
Yeah, they're all like wearing like black hoods and they're like putting it into a projector.
Oh my gosh.
Do you see? Yeah.
Wow.
It's like a old smoky room where just a bunch of old men are sit
Like
around
Mad
a board
Men,
and
yeah.
like yeah, they just say like
They were a bunch of old men, but I don't know. They probably threw that in the trash. Anyway, yeah, that's just, what a ridiculous thing to
Slides.
ask for.
When you were talking about taking classes in your local art school, was it a school that was different from SVA? Did you go to a community college for?
Yeah, it was Brookdale Community College, which was right in my hometown, and they had an associate's in arts. So I was just taking life drawing and learning what stippling meant, which I still don't quite understand.
I still don't know what that means.
I guess it's a bunch of dots. It's a fancy name for a bunch of dots.
Oh, okay. That I can do.
Yeah.
How can kind of reeling it back a little bit to you being in computer science?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of made you realize that you wanted to do cartoons, and what made you realize that you didn't like to do computer science or?
Well, realized I didn't want to do programming when I literally broke down crying in the middle of work.
That's a wake-up call.
Yeah, it really was. And then a week later, I left that job and left the school that I was going to.
Because you were doing both at the same time. You were doing school and working at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Taking calculus 4 and the Pascal programming, which has really helped me in life so far.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I kind of, I guess there was this Shore Fest animation festival that came around, and they played a whole bunch of shorts. They played Mark Osborne's More, was a short done in 2001. Mark Osborne later did Kung Fu Panda. I didn't know he was going to do that. Tom Winkler, I think it's Tom Winkler of Duty.com, came and showed a bunch of poopy cartoons.
I was going to say, with a name like Duty.com.
Yeah, it was the first. It was even before Strong Bad became a thing. It was the first. It was one of the first big hits on the internet. It was literally just a cartoon a day, a flash cartoon a day about poop.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Newton was there, who I didn't know who the heck that was at the time, but later went on to design The Incredibles and was talking about his quote unquote friend that worked on The Simpsons. And I realized later he was talking about Brad Bird. So there's this. Yeah, he was saying my friend on The Simpsons bitches about all these rules that they have on The Simpsons where, Homer's mouth cannot be bigger than the thing that he's eating. It's really stupid. And then 5 years later, I learned that he was, talking about Brad Bird on The Simpsons. But that was that festival. There was so much varied cartoons and varied film and varied animation. And especially Mark Osborne's short, really blew my mind as far as emotion. I really connected with it. And I really connected. The whole short is about kind of the commercialization of art and how to stoke that fire within yourself, which I didn't really understand. The subtext kind of flew by me as a 21-year-old kid. But I really emotionally connected with that short, and the music was really amazing. And I think it kind of stoked a fire that just kept burning from there. And that was 2 years before I dropped out of school, before I dropped out of engineering school. So it buried its claws into my head, and I didn't quite figure it out why until later.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was gonna say. You were kind of thinking about it for a while. So I guess you were kind of more impacted by shorts and festivals, or were you also kind of watching a lot of TV as a kid?
I didn't watch a lot of TV as a kid. I mostly played a lot of computer games. I did a lot of multi-use and dungeon, basically the World of Warcraft, but the text version. I was on computers all the time and never really connected with animation or stories until I started becoming my own person and having time to myself as opposed to going to school and working, etc.
Right.
And it was just a slow seeping of no, this is actually what I'm connecting with. There's a lot of weird emotional stuff tied up with that, but that kind of was my journey.
Right. Yeah. I guess maybe in the text games that you were playing, would you say there was a lot of story in those games, or it was mostly just kind of puzzle solving?
There was a lot of story. There was a lot of story. How do I say that? There was a lot of user generated story. Not a story you're playing God of War and it's a narrative story that's taking you through. It was story that was created by the people. It was basically like D&D. Like it was a continually evolving story that was collaboratively told by the people that were playing it.
Damn, that's really
and I
cool.
got really invested in that. It was super cool and it was a lot of fun, but there was no like output from it. There was just an emotional experience that you had, but there was nothing that was created at the end of the day when you were playing this game.
Yeah, well,
So,
I mean,
but I connected with those emotions, you know.
yeah, I mean, does it need to have output? You know, like it was important to you, right?
Yeah,
It was like it's like D&D because it's like you don't really make anything when you're playing D&D. It's just for fun.
yeah, unless you're Matt Mercer.
I feel like there's always I like to kind of find the thread in like how people connected through stories, but like through all these different mediums. Because like obviously, you grow up on animation, you go into animation. That's like a very linear kind of way of like figuring out that you like someone might love animation. But I like other types of like ways of getting really invested into story, which I think is really interesting with that kind of with those kind of games and like D&D and like kind of like those like user generated content and all that, because it's like very like it's very like storytelling or like lore driven, which is I think lore is like it's like a pretty important part of like a lot of animated shows, I would say.
Yeah, and like it's whatever gets you emotionally invested, whether it's playing yourself and getting yourself into it, or it's creating something, or it's watching somebody else go through emotions. Like I'm always interested in the story.
Right.
And I get more excited by like, not by the stories that, I don't know what I'm drawing. I don't know what kind of motorcycle this is.
Follow your heart.
I'm just going with it. Yeah, I'm just chasing this dragon. I get really interested in artists' stories more so than like sometimes more so than actually making the show. Like, I don't know, it's weird. Like, I get really excited when somebody gets a promotion, or when somebody, breaks into the industry, or puts a little bit of themselves in the story or in the show. You know what I mean? And like, I love watching final animation and seeing the board artist, or seeing the revisionist, or seeing the director, or seeing the art director, like seeing the drawings behind it. Like whenever I watch final animation, I still see the animatic, and I love that, because I can see like that's a lake drawing, that's a cat drawing, that's a Heather drawing,
That's really
Yeah,
great.
it's ideally you would keep as much of that as you can, but obviously things kind of it passes through a lot of hands, and so boards rarely feel one-to-one from the board. But
yeah, but even in a CG show like what we're working on, I could still see like, oh, that's a Ray pose, the way that
Sure.
Ray cocked the head and had an up angle on the nose, and oh, that was a really fun acting moment that Heather added, or the board artist added, or that the revisionist added. And it's like, I love seeing those little moments in the final animation, because that makes it all worthwhile to me.
yeah, fans pick up on that stuff too. It's always shocking to me. I've seen like breakdowns of like Steven Universe's boards, like comparisons of like, this was like this person's drawing, and it's like, damn, that really is that person's drawing. You start to really notice certain things. And,
Down to like even in the Looney Tunes cartoons, like, you can see Bob Clampett. What's a Bob Clampett scene, or like what's a Tex Avery scene, and like you can still see that, even though today's pipelines are a lot more smooth, and are through many more hands. But yeah, it's awesome that you can still tell a Jeff Liu drawing. You can still tell like Rebecca boarded this scene herself.
Yeah, that stuff's really exciting, because you want to feel, everyone wants to see the artist's hand, I think, but then they also complain about things not being on model or whatever.
It's two different crowds.
Yeah, it is two different crowds.
You can't please everyone.
You sure can't. You sure can't. Do you feel like your like engineering computer background has kind of helped you later on, with animation at all going forward?
I wish I could say yes, but no, not really.
Okay.
I mean,
but that's you figured out that it wasn't for you, and so
Right.
Yeah, it helps in that, like, sometimes I can talk to the CG directors and like, yeah, NURBS, B splines, IK rigs, FK rigs, cool, yeah, or like, we're running a shotgun pipeline right now on our studios, and I can understand the ingest process because I understand how XMLs work. So like, okay,
that's something.
Yeah, so I can like I know it's helped me just enough to sound smart, but not enough to actually get anything done.
But that's that's fine. Most of the time, I just want to sound smart, really.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, that's what being a supervising producer is all about. Once you get up to that level
Just
of
want
management,
enough. You just want to sound smart, so that people still respect you at the end of the day.
Exactly.
That's interesting though, because I mean, yeah, I think it sounds like it must help out even just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, clearly you picked up on it wasn't making you happy anymore, and so you pivoted away.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, going back to SVA. So you did some night classes before you got into the school. How long was the school curriculum, and how was your experience at SVA?
It was a 4-year program. It was a 4-year BFA program, and it's interesting because New York at the time was all about Bill Plimpton and Don Hertzfeldt and Michael Sporn and John Dilworth and all these amazing independent animators. And that was kind of a lot of people's dream to become an independent, to go one of those paths and become an independent animator and, make a living like Bill Plimpton or make a living like Don Hertzfeldt doing your thing. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to be in a big studio or if I wanted to be an independent filmmaker. So I kind of didn't really pick a lane. And so when it came time to be applying to studios, after moving to Los Angeles and it came time to applying to studios, I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the technical skills. I didn't have the boarding skills. Didn't really have the draftsmanship skills that it took in order to get a job as a board artist, or as a director or as a revisionist. So I feel like SVA was an amazing program, and I know a lot of amazing people came out of that. I mean, Rebecca Sugar was 2 years. I was 2 years before her, and Phil Rinda. Yeah, Phil Rinda was a year before me, and he was absolutely amazing. And yeah, it was a great program. I'm not sure that I took advantage of it as much as I could. And I'm not sure that I was even prepared for it. I didn't have the 5 years worth of drawing or the 10 years worth of drawing experience that that Phil had or some of the other people had. I was bottom rung. I was coming in scraping by. My portfolio was barely good enough to even get into SVA. So, I mean, it was the best I could have done at the time.
Sure. How old were you at this time?
I was 4 years behind everybody because of engineering school. So I think I was 25 when I graduated.
Okay. Yeah. But that's still
pretty young though.
That's young, yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like when I attended Gobelin, a lot of my classmates were around that age, were they started Gobelin at 24 or
wow.
Yeah. Because
yeah.
I feel like it's not. It doesn't feel like
there's all this pressure. We talked about it before on the show too. That it's there's all this pressure to figure everything out in your early 20s, and it's not fair, and it's also not reasonable. People try things, they realize it's not for them, they switch, and so I think that's young. That's still not, especially now thinking back on 25. It's man, shit. It's there's so much life ahead of you.
Mm-hmm. I was comparing it. I was still friends with a lot of people in the engineering program, and by the time I came out to Los Angeles and was working, I got my first job working retail, in 2006, and half the people that I went to school with were VPs at Amazon or something. So all the friends that I was talking to and all the people that I had connected with, because not a lot of people that I knew from my SVA class moved out west. Mm-hmm. So I kind of still connected with all the friends that are in engineering school, and it's they're buying cars, they've put a down payment on a house, and I'm working working a $12 an hour job in Los Angeles, quote unquote, living the dream, trying to be and they it just felt it felt awful. It felt absolutely awful.
Did you feel maybe were you going through a lot of self-doubt kind of during that time?
Oh God, yeah 100%. I didn't get my first studio job until 2010. It took 5 years of taking storyboard tests or taking prop design tests or color design tests, and taking classes and whatnot in order to get the first gig at Nickelodeon. And thank God for friends like Phil.
Yeah.
and Jim Schumann, like Adam Henry, and thank God that, like, that they helped me through those periods, because they were amazing.
Friends will take you far. Yeah, you pretty much just. I think that's the important thing to always remember, is like when you're coming into LA and you're fresh faced and looking for a gig, like just make friends. Like it'll take some time, but those connections will definitely pay off. They always.
I think that's so true. I don't know if I already told this story on the podcast, but like when I moved to LA, the first thing that I did was looking for roommates. That fortunately I was like connected through the internet enough to like some animation people that I ended up having 2 roommates who also worked in animation, and I feel like that really, I don't know, that really helps, because it's like, I don't know, there's like a lot of reasons, but one of them is mostly like, oh yeah, like I'm not the only one like trying to figure out this like crazy, because LA is so, I don't know, for me coming from France, it was very different. It's like so big, there's so many studios, and it's such a specific industry, I think, in terms of like how casting goes, and like how figuring out productions and like studios, how they're different, you know, kind of like. So anyway, having 2 roommates that are also working.
When did you come out to LA? Or I mean, I guess that's right. You had a slightly different situation. Like, what are y'all's stories? Because I don't know. I haven't heard your stories about breaking in.
Yeah. Well, check out episode 1 and 2 of Creative Block.
Oh, okay.
No.
Oh, that's serious.
V and I think we were we came to LA like a year apart, actually. I think.
You were 1 year early compared to me, because. You were on Loud House. You were in-house on Loud House for a year. I was freelancing for 2 years prior moving to LA until they got the visa figured out. And yeah, I don't even know if I told the story during my podcast, but like there was this crazy time where I was in Iceland, like doing a road trip with a friend, and that was like a couple months right before like I came over to LA, and my soon-to-be roommates were like, we found the perfect house, because I was just like, I trust you guys. Like, I had never met them before. I was like, I trust you guys. You're going to find a good house. And they kept sending me like, what about this house? I was just like, do it. I just
I'm in Iceland. I don't care.
Yeah. And then they were like, we had to like sign to notarize the lease.
Yeah.
And because you're not going to be there in person. And then I was like, holy shit, you know, like, and you know how like the house market is crazy in LA, like people like rent houses or like apartments like super fast. And like Teresa, my roommate at the time, was kind of like, you got to do it, V, you got to do it. And I was just like through email, as I was like, we were just like road tripping in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, you know what, I'll just use the internet, figure out how I can find someone to notarize my lease. And I went to Reykjavik, and thank God it's such a small city. It was really easy to set up an appointment. And so this Icelandic, not lawyer, but like how do you call someone who can notarize a document?
It's just a notary, I think.
Notary, yeah.
Notary, yeah. Like, so this Icelandic notary was just like, all right, let's look through this lease. And he was just like, why is this lease 15 pages long? And I was just like, I don't know, man. It's LA.
That's so weird.
Really, yeah, that's crazy.
It's like you have to. It feels like a battle royale in LA to try to get an apartment. It's like whatever advantage you can get. We had to find an apartment. The apartment that we're in now, and I'm almost scared to move because of how like fucking scary it is to try to find a new place. But like we got here at like 8 a.m. to look at the place, and we were the first people to even look at it. The people who were moving out were still there. And we were like leaving and driving away, and I was like, let's just take the place. Like it was just like we'd already looked at like 4 apartments, and it was like, let's just take it. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, let's just take it. And but it was nice. Like we liked it right away. But I was like, let's not overthink this. Let's just fucking do it.
Just do it.
But I moved to LA when I was in 2014, and I was doing freelance for a bit. And right as that job was ending, I managed to get the gig on Loud House. And so, but I think it was probably only like 6 months before V rolled in, because I think it was in 20. Did you start in 2015, V? Did you move?
So yeah, okay. 2015 sounds right.
Yeah, it's probably only like 6 months.
I remember it was September.
Oh, then yeah, because I started in February, so it was about that time. And it's been a horrible 6 years since. No, it's LA is great. You know, there's ups and downs. But anyway.
Yeah, like back to when you were like during those 5 years, because I like to kind of like talk about those really trying moments for artists, because
Mhm.
especially like because there's always going to be a moment during like an artist's journey where like you have to kind of like go through really trying times, and that will test like your faith in like this career. And kind of like how did you get through those 5 years? Like what helped you keep the faith and like keep trying out for jobs, even though you said you had all of your friends in IT that were like doing so well?
Desperation. It was like the alternative was going back to programming or taking a tech job, and that seemed worse.
Right.
And I don't know, just being stubborn headed and wanting to do it and be like, no, I can do this. And I honestly, I don't know what carried me through. Just being stupid.
No, I think
Honestly.
it's really funny because Jared said the same thing, but like I think on his episode, Jared Morgan. But I feel like for me, I don't know, like I had kind of like a moment like that when I was like around the end of high school, because I was kind of already on the scientific path, and I had a thought to myself, which, you know, was extremely dramatic.
Mhm.
And I basically, yeah, it was kind of this thing where it's like, well, this is this, or it is nothing kind of thing, right? It's like all or nothing. It's just like, this is the only thing I really want to do kind of like mindset, right?
Yeah, it's like if I can't do this, then what am I doing on this earth?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. I feel like this is definitely a very like, I don't know, like sometimes motivation comes from, yeah, really.
Comes from weird spots.
Yeah. So when during those 5 years you said you worked retail, what kind of jobs did you work?
Apple retail. It was mostly Apple retail.
Oh, okay.
I was a Mac specialist, which is what they call the people that sell you stuff. And then I was a creative for a little bit, which is what they call the people that taught the classes at the time. So like doing workshops and whatnot. And was a fill-in genius for a little bit, which is what they call the people that repair computers. So it was mostly selling stuff. It was sales techniques. You know, it was customer service. Yeah, hustling.
Did you feel like you were in a cult because those names are so scary? What is like feeling genius? What is it?
The problem with that company is that they're really good about you making you feel really good about being part of it. Like, and there's some stuff that I've stolen from that yeah, they do a warm welcome. Like when you get hired, you're supposed to walk into the studio or walk into the store at a certain time. And I hope this isn't trade secrets. I don't think it is. I think this has all been talked about.
I mean,
but you're supposed to show up for your first day at like a certain time at like 6 p.m. or whatever. And it's you and the whole crew of people that you've been hired with. And then as you walk in, there's literally they come out from the back and they just clap you in, and they just say like, we're so
weird.
excited.
Oh no.
It's
so weird.
It's weird, but I swear to God, it works.
Oh
like
I get it. Yeah, totally.
Like, and I stole that for trolls. Like, because when people were coming aboard, like, especially in the animation industry, it's so hard to onboard people.
Yes.
So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, you show up for your first day and you're like, okay, where's my desk? Who am I supposed to meet with? There's no generally any clear.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like your first experience of walking into a studio where you're so excited about it. You're like, okay, where do I go? Who's the person that I talk to? Who's my supervisor? Et cetera, et cetera. So like I really wanted to make the first moment of people coming onto Trolls like actually nice. So like finding out that like, okay, they were gonna drop the new board artists on the production, and they were gonna bring us into the production. They were gonna bring them into production at like 10 in the morning. So we would be like, I would make sure that we were there and just there to greet people and like just clap them in and just be like, we're excited to have you.
That's really sweet.
Yeah.
That's really cute.
Yeah, that comes from a place of love. With Apple, I'm like, it's like inundating you into the cult. But hey, man, all I have is Apple products, so I'm part of the fucking problem. But I like being in the Apple store. I like going in. I mean, I don't like when there's a lot of people in there, but there's just like, I like how, maybe it's just my OCD brain, but I like how nice and like square it is, and everything's so clean.
I think it was in one of Luke Hilly's comics he posts on Twitter. He has a character in his description that says like as a hobby he likes to hang out in the Apple store, and I was just like, that is so specific and so funny.
I get it.
It's like
Man.
I can see people, yeah, I could like this is so rooted in reality. That's so funny.
It's very fun to watch people take selfies with a FaceTime camera on the computers.
Huh.
Like especially like circa 2006, 2007, like high school students would come in and just it was like a fun thing that they did. Rather than going to the photo booth, they would come into the Apple store.
Sure.
Take 30 minutes worth of selfies of them and their friends, and then email them to each other, and then get out. It was like a weird social thing.
But does
so
that? I mean, Apple
funny.
probably encourages that, right, to a degree.
Right.
Oh heck yeah.
Yeah,
They love it. They absolutely love it. It's awesome.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like I feel like a different store would like kick them out, but Apple knows that it's about the brand and like the experience and everything.
Yeah, it's about smiling kids.
Brilliant. I remember when I first got I think it was like an iPod Nano, so that dates when this happened. But but I went in there and I was just like ringing it up, and I was like looking down at the receipt or something, and then I turned around to leave, and the cashier was standing there with my bag with the iPod in it, like arm out, like, thank you for shopping. And I was like this dystopian, like weird futuristic thing. And I was like, it like scared the shit out of me. I was like, what the fuck? But I mean, it makes you feel like you're in this weird, like tech future. They really think it through.
That's so
And
funny.
it works. It works.
Do you feel though like being at Apple also kind of like in the Apple store, like do you feel like that was kind of nice though to have kind of like, I guess, like that family?
I do. And I loved the customer service training that we got there, because it was, so my fiance and I both, we met at the Apple store. So that at least came out of that. So that was awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
But they do, the customer service training is great. And they teach you how to help people like become less frustrated, and how to work with people, and how to make sure that everybody has a good experience. And like some of that training I've found extremely helpful just in the animation industry when you're just working with people, and it's like, it's not like creepy, like mind judo. It's proceduralized empathy, which they try to instill in you. Which was awesome. It was like, you have to empathize with this person. Like you have to understand that this person is having a bad experience, or it is frustrated, and it's not necessarily at you. Yeah. They're frustrated at the situation. So it's your job to like kind of help them not be frustrated anymore, and promise that you will take care of it.
I read this book, Nonviolent Communication, which I kept bothering everybody about, but it's basically kind of that. It's like the technique about like trying to really empathize with the person before you ever even try to solve any problem, and just kind of like really try to connect and to kind of like de-escalate emotionally, like the frustration and or like kind of like, I guess I would say like negative emotion.
A lot of people just don't get empathy. Like, I don't know. It's like, it's this, as we've seen in the last 4 years, people have a really hard time with empathy for some reason. And I really thought that was a given, but I guess. And so if Apple has figured out a formula to like, teach their people how to like you said, what is it, like procedurally, what'd you call it?
It's proceduralized empathy.
Proceduralized empathy. That's fascinating, because at the very least they know how to deal with people's frustrations. Yeah.
And it's like, it is like fake it till you make it, I guess. It's by going through the motions, like even if you think all the like the proceduralized stuff is crap, like by going through the motions, you find yourself getting in that emotional state of empathizing, and like it's helpful for both parties, which is what I love.
Sounds like you got quite a bit out of this Apple job.
More than like from your computer.
Well, it was 5 years, so yeah, I hope so.
Oh, okay, 5 years is a long time. Yeah.
And I got my relationship with the fiance, so
that's great.
That was, if you're listening, that's the best thing.
How do you feel was testing on, like doing tests on top of like working this job? Do you feel like that was a lot of work, or like how was your schedule like?
It was rough. So I was working part-time, and I was offered a full-time gig, but decided that I didn't want to do it full-time because, I wanted the time to test. And it was stressful. It was stressful because you don't have like 8 hours a day in order to concentrate on a test.
Right.
It was, I don't know what the heck I'm drawing, by the way. I'm just mindlessly drawing.
This is great.
And it was tough to juggle, it's context switching. You would have to go work on the test for 4 hours and then go to work for another 8 hours and then come back and work on the test. And it was such heavy context switching that it was like it was pretty hard to schedule everything or to figure it out. And, it showed in the tests where, I was nervous and kind of panicking and, just trying to get it done and cram things in as quickly as possible. So it was a lot of panic, a lot of like nervousness about it.
Is this something that you feel that now as someone who might be looking at tests for like hiring and stuff, is it something that you notice sometimes when people send in tests? Yeah,
totally. And that's why I am personally, as a supervisor, I'm vehemently against tests. I'm vehemently against, other people may have differing opinions, but I'm vehemently against sending out a whole bunch of tests to a whole bunch of people and then seeing what comes back. Because I do, like, it's an extremely tough situation. Testing is extremely tough on the testee because they don't have the context of what the show is, of really what the show is about. They don't know what you're talking about, or they don't know what you're looking for in the test. They can understand what you say, what you're looking for, but it's never quite the same as actually being on a production and being in the mix and having the conversations with everybody and being able to show things to a director.
Right.
So that's why I'm personally strongly against testing unless it's like a role that somebody has not been has not had experience in, or like it's a step up.
Right.
Like if somebody is in production and wants to take a storyboard test or wants to take, an editorial test, I think that's like a different situation because they're making a leap or making a move over. But like if it's just like, and we're working on a show, I'm hiring for a show, there are a bunch of board artists that we're looking at that have previous experience, but you know what, let's test them to see how they do and if they can hit the style of the show. That, I don't know, that's such a hard thing to hit, and it doesn't necessarily seem like it's paid off or successful or is like a good experience for anybody. Right. So I'm vehemently against testing people in that particular situation.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I think that at least have it be a paid test, or like where people, like, I know some productions will freelance, treat the test basically as freelance, and then they might use some of the stuff. But yeah, without having that learning curve, it's really tough. Like, you're gonna end up burning yourself out on those. Yeah,
like freelance quote unquote paid tests, like that's great. That's perfect because it works out for everybody. Like you get paid and you get to be a part of the production, and maybe, and that's how Gabe Sward did that for me. When I was coming off of my first gig at Robot and Monster, the show was unfortunately canceled, and we were all looking for roles. And Gabe gave me a little bit of freelance for revisions, and I guess I quote unquote passed the test, and then he hired me as a revisionist on the show.
Gabe's a good egg. He gave me the boarding job on Animaniacs without testing me at all. It was, and
really?
Yeah, that's just in his character. Like he knew me. We had worked together on my short a little bit. Like he consulted on my short and just knew that I worked hard and like and had seen my boards, but I hadn't done it professionally. And he was just like, "No, you can do it. I know you can." And like that meant a lot, And so it's just like. And then I tried my best to rise to the challenge, and hopefully I did. I don't know.
And I'm sure you did. That's such a smart way to start a production, because then everybody like comes in on a good foot. Everybody's like, heck yeah, we're really excited to be a part of this. They're not exhausted by the test already coming into it.
Right.
It feels it's almost a little demoralizing to like have to test and then
yeah, totally. I feel like, I mean, there's so much we can talk about with tests. But I agree with like everything that you guys said. I feel like the first time I ever got a job where I wasn't tested on, I was like, oh, really? I thought I was going to have to do this my whole life.
Yeah.
So that was nice to be like, oh, nice. When I'm going to be 50. I'm not gonna keep testing on shows.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough that I haven't had to test since Loud House, and even that was like pretty lax because Amanda also was just kind of like working with me on the test, you know, and I'm sure her episode will come out before. Yeah, and so I think we talk about it a little bit in her episode, and like she was happy to give notes because it's like, well, I'll be giving you notes as an art director, so like why wouldn't I give you notes on the test? And that meant a lot too.
Yeah, exactly. Like the real world working situation is going to be a working relationship. It's going to be a conversation. So why shouldn't the test be a part of that as well? Yeah.
And you can't do that if you send out a bunch of tests too. You know, like that. They were being really choosy with who they were sending tests to, and so that at least then you can give that aspect of it over to you can have a little bit of communication. But if it's like a bulk like machine gun of sending it to 40 artists, like you're not going to get to know them. How do you feel about like hiring somebody just based on their work, or would you still want to get to interview them and talk to them?
I always want to interview. Always. Yeah. I would always love interviewing because I'm just straight up a comedy guy. Like I've never hired for action. I've never really been on an action show. Puss in Boots was the closest that I got to that. And I find that the comedy is so relationship specific and so chemistry specific that like you can look at somebody's work and be like, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. Like their drawings are amazing and it's so funny. And then when you meet them, it's like, well, they do not like me. You know what I mean? I'm going to be their supervisor and they don't like me. And I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work out. So just like room chemistry is so important to me, even with editors, with revisionists, with the whole team. Like, you've really got to make sure that the chemistry is good, because then that's going to be the best type of show.
Definitely. Yeah. I always thought that's really important. Like because you're going to have to work together in the same space, and you want to make sure that everyone's going to vibe and click. And like, man, sometimes like one bad fit can kind of make the whole crew crumble a little bit, where the drama starts to like spill out and everyone's like talking, and it's like, that sucks. And you can't predict that. It's really hard when one person's gonna suddenly become really difficult to work with. But like if you don't even try at all, then.
And like that happened to me. My first from Nickelodeon, I was hired at DreamWorks to direct on Puss in Boots. And I was not a fit for that show. And within 3 months, I was fired on my birthday, which was hilarious.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome because like they fired me, and then I walked back to my spot to collect my things, and there were the cookies with the balloons that said "Happy Birthday."
Oh,
I feel like those are like this is like out of a movie, dude. It's like,
nobody got the memo that it was your birthday. Like that's like I don't even know if I'd be mad.
It was I wasn't at all. It was like, all right, fair play. This is fucking hilarious.
I guess this is it was kind of a blessing in disguise, though. I feel like when you're not like the right fit for a show, like slowly. I mean, I don't know. For me, I've been on shows where I wasn't the right fit, and slowly I see myself getting more miserable and just withering away. Because it's like, you're not the right fit. It's just everybody has like a different taste in movies. I don't know. Like I love the Coen Brothers. I'm sure some people hate the Coen Brothers, and it's like opinions at the point. So
yeah, and like thank God they fired me, and they did say like, you haven't, we're firing you as a director on Puss in Boots, but we have this opportunity to board on King Julian, which was a blessing in disguise, because that's how I met Mitch, our current EP, and that's how this role came about on Big Nate. But like it was a blessing in disguise. It was the first time that like I realized that I have to be careful about the shows that I work on, because I might not be a fit for them and I may do a bad job for them. So I should take my time when researching a show to work on, to make sure that I'm a fit for them, because it's a two-way street. I may not do action well. I will probably never do action extremely well. So got to be true to myself and understand that in order to be the best that I can for the production, I have to do my due diligence and make sure that I take a job or investigate jobs or investigate work that I could be the best fit for.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah, I've been kind of just like taking every job that's been offered to me for a while and just trying to build up the credits. But now I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I can be a bit choosy and like try to find something that would really like, get me excited. And I haven't had a chance to work on any like action comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Do you want to? Is that something that you're super excited about?
yeah, well, I mean, definitely any kind of action, but a lot of action shows are just so they're always like kind of like anime adjacent,
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
if I would have loved to have had a chance to work on some of the more cartoony action shows that have come about here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Even something like if you worked on Thundercats Roar, like that seems like that was a lot of fun
Yeah,
because you get to do a little bit of both.
exactly. Those are like really far and few in between. Like I feel like I haven't seen any shows like Thundercats Roar in like maybe Mammal, maybe.
Yeah, something like
Mm-hmm.
Mama. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're hard to come by, and I mean, and that's what Panic is too. Planet Panic is this mix of comedy and action, and it's like I grew up on Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Lab and all these shows that was like it was that where it was funny, but then it would have these moments where even if it was like tongue in cheek, it was like badass, and so it's like
Mhm.
that's the kind of stuff that I love and I want to work on. But I've done comedy,
Like those
and
Sakuga moments, yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, yes, and so like I've done the comedy. And so I'm kind of like, well, I gotta figure out. And also, I want to get into, full disclosure, you and I, we were interviewing last
Yeah.
week for
Yeah.
a job. And yeah, I'm trying to get into like a leadership position, and that shit's tough. And it's like you're saying, somebody just has to take a chance on you, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I'm being like very choosy.
Yeah, for me taking a leadership step was I had to find a specific opportunity for it, and for that it was going from boarding on King Julian to directing on Home, and that was like a quote unquote storyboard director position where like the only person I was directing was my board partner because it was a board driven show, so they had 6 storyboard directors, so it was the first time that I was ever like quote unquote responsible for somebody else's work, even though we were really like board partners. And then like doing that for a year, then I guess that that transitions into like, oh, maybe you can supervise other people.
Mm-hmm.
It was a weird situation, but it was cool.
I was gonna ask you, Jim, kind of like, can you run us a little bit through your career in terms of like what was your first gig and like how did you get your first gig, and then kind of like go on from there.
As much as I complain about tests, I got my first gig through a test on Robot Monster. Yeah, there was a posting online on the Nickelodeon website saying we're looking for board artists, and I happened to know Fred Seibert because we had an argument.
Okay.
In New York.
Interesting way to start a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was a smart ass kid that thought he had really strong opinions about animation that
Sure.
would pay off, but they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a contract at Nickelodeon at the time.
Mm-hmm.
As part of the awesome, I think it was Awesome Cartoons. And so I emailed him like, hey, I know Nickelodeon is looking for board artists in your show. Who can I buy lunch for?
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me Adam Henry's name, and I emailed Adam Henry. I was like, hey, I'm testing. Can I buy you lunch? Can I get some advice, etc.? Bought him lunch, and then did the test, turned it in, and it made its way to Jim Schumann, who was the supervising director on Robot and Monster, and he straight up said, like, your test wasn't great, but I think you might have potential. And he hired me as a board artist.
Awesome.
That's so great. Yeah, that's so great.
And like I almost got fired within my first 6 months. Like I was not a good board artist. I was trying my ass off, like working weekends, but I was not doing well. And it was like a hard year of working on that show, of really trying to do the job.
Did they kind of like when you say that you weren't good, like was it based on the feedback they gave you, or like were you just not happy with the work you were doing? Like kind of how did you get, because sometimes I feel some shows you don't really know until they're like bye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A testament to the way that Schumann runs a show. The feedback was very clear.
Nice.
And I very much knew where I stood. I could tell at pitches when my pitches weren't getting a laugh. I could tell at my drawings that my drawings weren't good enough. Getting a lot of feedback from my director. At one point I was really struggling, and so in order to give me a little bit more time, they freelanced half the board, or Schumann freelanced half the board to the director at the time.
Mm-hmm.
or to the other director at the time, to Chuck Austin, so that all I had to do in 3 weeks was rough half a board, half an 11-minute, so I could really concentrate and figure it out. Which is like, that's unheard of.
Yeah.
Like, my ass should have been canned like within my first 90 days, you know, because that's the union thing. But no, they were very clear with the feedback that I was not hitting the mark. But Schumann took a chance on me, and you know, Chuck Austin took a chance on me, and Sam Levine took a chance on me, and really helped me get my skills up very quickly. And I am extremely appreciative to them for that.
Yeah. When I was on Animaniacs, I was like such a talented ass crew that I think my imposter syndrome was just like going off the charts like the whole time. And I never got to socialize with anybody because I was just like nose to the grindstone the whole 6 months that I was on that show. Just like, I got to make sure these boards are good. And so just like, and people were really nice, and they were like watching like Demon Slayer at lunch and shit. And they're like, do you want to, they kept asking, and I had to keep saying no, because I was just like, no, I can't. And I was doing development stuff. And so I was just like, just stretched thin, and I felt so bad because I was like, these are all really nice people, and these are connections that I'm never gonna make, never friends that I'm not gonna make, because I was just like, just grinding. And like, yeah, I mean, you know, everyone was happy with my work, but it's tough. It's tough when you, like you were saying, like when you feel like you're not a perfect fit because everyone else was cranking through their boards, and people were like, yeah, like it's, you know, this is the best job I've ever had, like I can finish early. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm getting the same vibe.
It's kind of like the thing though when you start in boards, is like boards is just such a hard job. It's like, I remember like the first 3 years as a board artist in France, because the schedules in France are also like super tight. It's usually like between 3 to 4 weeks for an 11-minute with like cleans and revisions, and it's just like, yeah, you have no life. I was like, yeah, I remember at the beginning I was just like, am I going to be able to do this my whole life? I was just like, no, there's no way. There's no way. Like, I cannot live for somebody else's project until I'm 50. But then, like, after the hump, though, after, like, those first couple of, like, 3 years, it gets easier, because then, like, you know, like, you draw, like, a lot faster, and you start to understand, like, even just, like, choosing shots comes like a lot faster. It's like speaking another language. I read that in a book. I didn't make that up. I read that in a book. But like, yeah, eventually you're like, you can get to that spot like those other board artists on Animaniacs being like, wow, this
for
is such
sure,
a
yeah,
job, you know, yeah,
for sure.
Was Animaniacs your first board gig, Gene?
Sure was.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, trial by fire, man. It was yeah, it was a lot, and but I'm glad I did it. And I enjoyed it. I just, and plus, like, you know, I worked on the tail end of season 2, so none of that stuff will be seen for, I don't even know, actually. I have no idea when. And so people will ask me, it's just like, well, how did you feel when, like, the first season came out? It must have been great, right? I'm like, I had nothing to do with that. So it's hard to be, like, excited. I mean, my girlfriend worked on that, and so I was excited for her, but I had nothing to do with that first season. But yeah, it was a lot.
Are you glad that was your first board gig? Like, are you?
I think so. Yeah, I've been lucky to work on projects that are like, that have a name to them. You know, like Loud House when I started on Loud House, it hadn't premiered yet, but then once it came out, it was, you know, fucking huge. And so like, I've just been lucky in that way, that like the stuff that I work on tends to have a nice heft to it. And like, yeah, it was a lot, but I would have probably done revisions to kind of work my way into that position, but again, thanks to Gabe, you know, was just like, no, you can do it. And so I was really happy to, but then I had to step back down to revisions because I was even deeper in development, and and very burnt out. And so I did revisions on Jellystone for a year. And so, yeah, you know, I needed the break. That's
yeah.
Boards are tough.
What was your second gig, Jim, after that initial one?
After that, it was the revisions on Kung Fu Panda.
Nice. Was it was it a CG show, or was it a 2D show?
Yeah, that was a CG show. It was the first Kung Fu Panda, or the first Kung Fu Panda series. When they were still doing co-productions between Nickelodeon and DreamWorks.
Legends of Awesomeness, right?
Yeah.
Is that the?
Yeah, exactly. And that was for Gabe. And I had also tested for Fairly Odd Parents. Excuse me, like just as I was wrapping up on Robot and Monster. And then I guess Butch was on vacation or something, and like didn't get around to looking at tests until like 4 months later. So I was a revisionist for 4 months or so on Kung Fu Panda, and then got a call from Butch like, "Hey, do you want to come board on Fairly Odd Parents?" And that was my first 2D series, and I was terrified. I was terrified of having to draw on model, to the point where like I asked Butch to lunch, and we went to, I think, Zono Sushi in Burbank, and I was like, "Butch, are you sure you want me to work on this show? Like, I've never worked on a 2D show, and I don't really know how to draw on model." It's like, "Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be good. You'll be great." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then like immediately after that lunch, walked into Dave Thomas's office. I was like, "Hey, my name is Jim. You're an amazing board artist. Please teach me how to please teach me how to do what you do. I need fucking help, because I am gonna be terrified for the next 9 months unless you help me." And Dave Thomas was the founder of Wendy's, I guess his blog.
I was gonna say the founder of Wendy's.
Yeah, founder of Wendy's. Yeah. He taught me all about what it was like to work on that show and how to succeed and whatnot. And he was the only reason why I succeeded or passed on that show. I guess was not fired. I guess any job where you're not fired, I guess, is a success.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I feel too. It's like,
Yeah.
people seem to like me enough to keep me there, so that's good.
Yeah, exactly. Like they can say that like, we like your work, but that doesn't mean anything until the end, when you haven't been fired.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's
like not being fired is the only.
Okay, so they were serious. They weren't bullshitting. They actually
serious.
did like my work.
Yeah,
That's great. Okay.
Okay, phew.
Yeah, that's like
I feel like that never goes away either, ever.
No, God no. I'm sure. Yeah, once I manage to work my way up to directing or supervising, whatever, it'll be the same thing. It's just like, okay, for a whole season lasted and nobody fired me. That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really funny.
That's what it feels like now. Like, when are they? It's still imposter syndrome. Like, when are they going to figure out that all I do is like pitch stupid jokes in editorial, and then the board artists do them, and somehow they get through. Like, when are they going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm just making up nonsense in a room, and then sometimes people get inspired by it and then do it.
Well, you're guiding. That's ultimately what it is. It's just guiding people along.
That's what this job feels like. It's just like being a cheerleader. In this particular role, is just being a cheerleader for the team. Yeah, it's like just making sure that people are happy and making sure that people are set up well and like have a good schedule and like are having a good time with the content and like feel agency and feel ownership over their work. And then just cheerleading everybody, but like, you're doing fucking amazing.
Yeah, you made that meme, right? The directing is like breaking down the script, and then like most of it is marveling at the amazing job, and then revisions is like the tiny little bit at the end.
And it sounds like bullshit, but that's legit how I feel. Like, our board artists are amazing, and seeing people add jokes is absolutely amazing, and that feels like most of the job.
Yeah,
I think that's so true. I feel like, I don't know, especially if for me, when I started kind of like supervising, I had to understand like, wow, not everybody works like me. And then you see like all the different ways of working, and then you're like, wow, but like different is good. And it's like really cool.
That's good, because they're going to come up with stuff that I have no idea about, or like I don't know how to board like Ray. I don't know how to board like Meg. I don't know how to board like any of these people, and it's not my job to tell them how to board. It's my job to just be a sounding board for what they want to achieve.
Yeah,
that sounds great.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the stuff that I get the biggest kick out of, is just like the back end, I guess, the like setting stuff up for a team and then making sure that everything's moving on track. That's why like I'm so desperate to get into directing, because that stuff sounds very fulfilling.
And then when it goes wrong, you got to fall on your sword and be like,
of course,
I think the adage is like, pass credit, take blame. Like, that's what it feels like. Like, if a joke doesn't land, that's on me. If a joke lands, that's the board artist succeeded.
That's the other side of it. Yeah, is you're responsible for all of it.
It's true that it's like a weird thing where you're like, you help a lot, you don't really get a lot of credit, but that's also okay, because like you said, Jim, like just seeing like the board artist succeed kind of makes up for like not having like a final product that you really produced, right? In terms of like when you're a board artist, it's very straightforward. You do like, you crunch for 4 weeks, you get out like this board, and then it's like, I made all those drawings, I drew all this. And when you're a director, it's like, all right, the episode came in on time and it's good.
Yeah. As long as it came in on time.
Yeah, and everybody had a good time on it. It is like a weird context shift of I have specific deliverables. I have a board that I have to do to I have to be managing my time, and I have to figure out where to manage my time, and I like my deliverable is 70 to 80 to 90% of somebody else's work, of the board artist's work and the director's work, and the editor's work, and I'm here to facilitate that. So I'm responsible for the episode, but I'm only responsible for like adjusting 25 to 30% of it.
Right.
And as an SD or as an SP, it's even less. You're like, if you get a joke in per episode, it's like, heck yeah, all right, awesome.
Yeah.
I did something.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you want out of a job too. Because there are artists who love to put as much of their own sort of touch on stuff as they can. Like the boards. There's board artists who are diehard board artists because they love to feel like an episode was like theirs and all that. But I mean, if that's not that important to you, then it's exhausting to have to do that full time.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be in a position where I could say like, hey, EIC, hey team, I really want to board the main titles. Can I do that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Which is cool because it felt like, okay,
Yeah.
I did something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Totally.
you're doing plenty.
Yeah.
It's all I'm sure you're doing a shitload day in, day out.
So you were on Fairly Odd Parents, and how long was that? And how was it for you transitioning from drawing for CG and drawing for 2D?
That was for 9 months. I think it was 9 months. I think I had like 7 boards. It was on season 9.5. I guess Nickelodeon did a half season pickup.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a struggle. It was a struggle because on Kung Fu Panda and on Robot and Monster, we were using FBXs or OBJs and like basically models, 3D models of the sets. Mm-hmm. So I was able to use those when boarding or doing revisions. Was able to fly through the sets and do camera angles and figure out how I wanted to stage a scene. Mm. But 2D was the first time I'm like, no, you have to invent the backgrounds. You have to invent you have to invent what a train looks like in this world.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying because it was the first time that I was ever going to be showing roughs too.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And because on Robot and Monster it was 3 weeks to rough, 3 weeks to quote unquote rough, but it was 11 minutes, so you could your roughs could be relatively tight or could at least be relatively clear. But Butch wanted to see roughs for an 11-minute in like a week and a half, which means okay, I'm just gonna draw on the side here, but here's my rough of Timmy Turner, like, okay, he's excited, yay, that's one panel,
Yeah, you gotta get
like that's a drawing, and then okay, that's Dad, like Timmy. And like nobody's like, can Butch read that? Okay, here's a shot. Like, okay, it's there. It's Timmy's room. Timmy's here, and he's smiling. Woo! And like those were my roughs, And it's terrifying to have to trust that somebody can actually read your crap.
Yeah.
I feel like that was like the one thing on Thundercats that I loved the most was like since we had half an 11-minute, we had like just a couple days to rough out like, I don't know, something like 8 pages. Mm-hmm. And it was just that same thing where it was like, all right, how do I pick what I board? Because it became a thing where like there was definitely not enough time to do all of the shots. Mm-hmm. So we ended up having to like trying to like be, all right, so this is the big beat of this moment. So probably there's going to be this giant character here and it's going to look like this. And there's going to be maybe like all the little faces here or whatever. And it was just like kind of like, we called them, what was it? Like thumbs, or like they looked like thumbs or something, or like thumb people. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then like just kind of like, and yeah, it's like, all right, now you got to be really good at pitching because the drawing is this. This is what you're going to be looking at.
It's good shape language. I think it also helps when designing a show to try to, make sure the characters are all distinct so that you...
That one.
It's easy.
Yeah. That one too.
Yeah. Like, what's the shorthand? Like, dad on Fairly Odd Parents, you can go, okay, that's Dad. or you're like, do a
Yeah.
little cutout right there. That's dad. I think mom was like, boom, 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 boom. Like, okay, that's mom.
Mhm.
Sparky was boom, big nose, boom, 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 nose, smile. Hey, like there's Sparky, there's the dog.
Yeah. Crocker's got that fucking head, right?
Oh my god, that ear on the back of his neck.
Yeah. There it is.
I love that character.
I feel like what I liked personally about like boarding really fast, and like when I had to, I'm not doing the apology of crunch time, but like when you're on a show where you have to be really, really fast, it forces you to not be precious about the drawings and start just thinking about story and like the beats. And I really just like, I ended up starting to really appreciate that process of like being extremely fast. And also then it's really easy to just throw away a whole scene because the roughs are so rough that it's like, all right, not working. Let's rewrite this.
Yeah, even now on a show with a more relaxed schedule, like I'll try and board things as quickly as possible just to not throw on like like a 3-hour electronic music DJ set and just try and cruise through thumbnails as quickly as possible, to not second guess and then go back.
That's so true. Yeah, that's like the whole second guessing thing. Like that's so true. Like having worked on shows that are like really fast paced, then you start to just kind of be like, well, I did this thing, and now I have a first version of the scene.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of crunching myself, like of giving myself a slightly unreasonable deadline in order just to get stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's better to finish early than like I've tried to condition myself to just cram early on in a a cycle, whatever it be, an episode deadline. Like if on Loud House, like we would be getting 2 weeks per episode for backgrounds, and I would try my best to just finish in the first like 3 days, and it's like I was tired, but then I had a week to do nothing, and so it's like I was trying to create these breaks for myself, but then there were people who were chipping away at it a little bit, which is fine, if that works for you, it's totally great. But like I hate that because I think my anxiety is just like I have this thing hanging over my head, and I know I need to get it done, and I don't want to be working up against the deadline that close.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I get distracted if I'm not working as fast as possible.
That's true. Yeah, I feel that a lot. Yeah. Like if I don't have like a really quick deadline, then that's so funny. That's so true. After Fairly Odd Parents, what show did you go on?
Fairly Odd Parents was Breadwinners.
Oh yeah, that show looked awesome.
Yep. And I think it's disparaged on the internet a lot as far as being like too loud ducks. Like it gets a lot of hate on YouTube. And it seems like people don't particularly like that show, or Nickelodeon didn't particularly like it. I don't know what the backstory is, but I had a blast working on that show. Like it was so much fun. We were boarding to time. We were boarding radio plays. There were a lot of like fun expressions. The characters were really fun to draw, and I had a blast boarding on that show.
I feel like got the same. I don't know. It's kind of like Thundercats. It's like when you have like this like goofy humor, like with characters being like really silly for some reason. Like I don't know. People just online just don't like that. They don't like fun.
No, well, the shows that they're not even the target demographic. So let's just say that. Like the people who complain the most are not watching the fucking shows. So that can just be disregarded. But yeah, it sucks. It sucks because like I think the shows that board artists and maybe just artists in general like working on the most are the ones where they have the freedom to just do what they want to do to express themselves, and people have all these weird like this show is like not on model, and like there's all these weird opinions that people have formed about what animation should be. It's like, you're 30. Like why are you upset about this when you're 30? But I don't know.
Kids don't know. I mean,
kids don't care.
I mean, like, I would never know. Like, when I was a little kid and watching all the Looney Tunes, I could not tell the difference between all the different directors or all the different eras of Looney Tunes. So it's like
kids don't care. If it's fun.
Yeah, and like my personal philosophy is you never really know how a show is going to turn out. I mean, you can have like the best talent and everybody's having a blast on working on it, and the show can turn out terrible. for whatever reason. And so you might as well just have fun working on the show, because you don't have as much control over the final product, over how it's received. So just have a blast working on it.
Exactly. That is so true.
Yeah, definitely. What came after Breadwinners?
After that, I got the directing opportunity at DreamWorks on Puss in Boots. And
cool.
that's, the show that I was eventually fired off of for good reason.
That is so hard, because it's like, I feel like when you get the first time leadership position, I don't know for you, Jim, but like, I know for me, like that happened to me on Cry Together Creek as well. And then it's like, you're like, what did I do wrong? What went wrong? Like, and then it's like this, like, I'm not supposed to be a leader. I'm a terrible leader. Maybe I'm just supposed to be a board artist until the rest of my life. I don't know if you felt that way. Like, because right after Puss in Boots, did you go back to boards, or did you?
Yeah, I went to boards on King Julian.
Right, that's right.
Which was an absolute blast. That show was a blast. But yeah, I went through a huge crisis of confidence. Of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't even feel like I should have been a board artist on King Julian. It was like, I had a total crisis of confidence. And I think it took like a number of pitches of getting laughs to kind of build up my confidence again.
To be like, okay, I'm funny, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like, especially because you said that you like to do comedy the most, Jim. Like, I don't know. For me, it's also something that I'm always thinking. I'm like, am I funny? Am I like? I don't know, because it's such a big part of doing boards. It's like, I don't know. Is it something?
I love comedy, because like they say like. That it's an art, not a science, but it really is a science.
It
like
is,
science,
you have it's literally the scientific process. You have a hypothesis, which is your attempt to get the joke across. You have the test, which is the pitch, if it gets a laugh, and then you get the data, and then you go back and tweak it if you do get a laugh or don't get a laugh. Like, it's literally it's just repeating over and over, and if it doesn't work, you change it. If it doesn't work, you change it. And it's such a binary thing. Like, you get a laugh. Yeah, exactly. Really, you have a success condition.
I was gonna say, even beyond that, I feel like just the nature of it is, it's timing, and it's so specific. It's like how baking is a science, where it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of wiggle room, but like, you got to take that bread out of the oven at the right time. And it's the same thing with jokes. It's like, if you don't get that timing right, it's not going to land. And that's not something that's something you just have to like feel and know, and kind of sometimes, you can try it and see what works. But again, it's the same thing as baking. Like, it's like you might find little mistakes here and there, or, happy accidents, but it's pretty clinical at times. Like, a millisecond can change the difference if a joke lands or not.
Yeah, and it's such a scientific process of human thought too, because like most jokes are like leading somebody to think one thing, and then you pull the rug out from under them, like the good Mitch Hedberg one-liners, and like, so it's a science of what are you thinking at this point. Like, I have said this line. Psychology, what are you thinking at this point? You are thinking I'm going this way. So it's knowing the internal state of an audience and what they're thinking, and then pulling the rug out from under them. And that's a science of like, my fiance does user testing for software applications. So very often she is just watching somebody use a piece of software, and sometimes she'll stop somebody and be like, okay, why did you click on that? What did you think that was going to do? And I feel like for us, it's the same thing. Like, okay, what did you think was going to happen at this moment? Was I successfully leading you down a particular path of thought so that I could pull the rug out from under you? And I love the science of it in that part. It's so much fun.
I went down a rabbit hole of learning a lot about game design when I first started at Nickelodeon.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, because I think there was a lot of like video essay YouTube channels that had popped up around that time, or maybe I just discovered them. But yeah, I went down this rabbit hole, and I learned a lot about storytelling through that, weirdly enough. And because there's this concept of like the first 15 minutes of a game, and you want to establish, story, controls, like there's so many things you're trying to teach people without beating them over the head, and keep them engaged. And like, you're balancing so much, and they use Half-Life 2 as an example of like an amazing first 15 minutes, because it's like you get the story beats, you get thrown into the story, you get a wrench right away, you get all this stuff, and so they're like teaching you, or not wrench, whatever it is, crowbar, and then and that's how I approach my short for Planet Panic, because I was thinking, I have 3 minutes to try to get all of this story out and a world and all these things, and so it was like clinical. Like I was really trying to like hone in on the important parts and making sure every joke had purpose and all this stuff. And I think it's interesting to think of comedy as a science, because I think storytelling almost as a whole is kind of a science, but I guess it depends on what genre you're working with too. And
I think I love the game design analogy too, because that is so important. It's knowing what you're communicating to the audience and getting them invested in a very quick way with a little bit of information, but also withholding so much.
I see it almost, it's like it's teaching. I guess I approached my thing as like teaching the audience about the idea that I had, and since then I've been trying to do that with pitch Bibles and stuff, which is a never-ending thing. Was it the end goal keeps shifting, but when it comes to, I know, I feel like I get audiences. I feel like an audience is easier to please than an executive, because it's like if it's something that's original, you feel like it's original, and the jokes land, and you have a little bit of references to things. There's all these little things that it's like if you're paying attention to what people talk about online, you can kind of figure it out. And so from there, it's just like treating the story as a way to teach the audience why they're going to like it. And that's kind of, I've never really talked about this, but I maybe with anyone, but I find like it interesting. To me, it's an interesting way to approach it. And that's why I like how you're describing comedy as a science, because I kind of think of it the same way.
Yeah. It I don't know. I also don't know how else to think of it. You know what I mean? Like it seems like, oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, there's also just the fact that animation is usually so fast, and it's just like a linear medium. You just have to be so very, like not specific, but clear. You have to be extremely clear.
Yes.
Just because you just don't, because you can't afford to not be clear, or else they're gonna, like, the audience is just gonna be like, I don't know what's going on, and then change channel, or like check Instagram or any of this. So, you have to just make sure that everything is a little Lego brick that perfectly fits on top of the previous one, so it doesn't all fall apart.
Yeah.
And I love watching like street magicians or stand-up magicians, or even like Penn and Teller do, because they are so, like, since most of it's pantomime, I mean, like if you turn off like, you see what they are driving you to. Like the simplest version of the trick is like, look, I've got an egg, and they show you the egg and they shake it up and down a little bit to show to the audience, like, this is a real egg, this is a normal egg, it behaves like a normal egg, and you know how that happens. And then like takes a tissue, like a normal Scott paper tissue, and then like shakes it up and down a little bit and shows you that you can see through it, to establish to the audience, like, okay, this is a tissue. And then like, puts the tissue on the egg on the table. You understand how a tissue works. You understand that a table is hard. You understand that an egg is breakable very easily. So tissue plus egg plus table is one system. And then if you take your hand and you smash the combination, like, the audience knows everything about a tissue, the audience knows everything about an egg, the audience knows everything about a table. They know you've driven exactly how that combination should work. It should be egg everywhere. But then, boom, dove comes out for no particular reason. And like, like in pantomime, the stand-up or the magicians are so clear about delivering every little bit of information so that they can pull the rug out from you in a really, really clear and awesome way. I love that stuff.
I think that's so true, because I do feel like magicians like definitely use the same skills as we use in animation. It's an analogy that I've seen probably in a book before, but then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, this is so true. We're doing everything like the way especially with the way we board on 2D shows, even CGI shows, because you have to have like the silhouette and like like breaking down every single little moment so that every single beat lands, and then like it's so fun. It's really fun. Yeah.
And eye dart can mean the difference between a laugh or not a laugh, or a blink can make the difference between a laugh, because you're defining what that character is thinking, or defining what an audience should be thinking about this particular moment. I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And after, so you did Puss in Boots, and then King Julian, and then after King Julian?
After King Julian, I had always wanted to work on a board-driven show. And Thurup Van Orman and Ryan Kriego kind of got my name. I'm not sure how they got my name, but they got my name through somewhere, and then they contacted me to test on Home Adventures with Tip and O. And I did a board test, and they liked it enough. I did a board test like over Thanksgiving weekend, because I was single at the time and had the time. And so I did the test over Thanksgiving weekend. It was like 50 panels, 60 panels, something like that. And then they brought me aboard to storyboard direct on Home. I was there for about a year and a quarter or so. And I was working with Dakota McFadden, who's an amazing cartoonist, and worked on Arlo now. And we were board harvest. We got partners together, and that was awesome. That was so much fun.
That's so cool. And how was it for you being like an episode? So you were an episode director, right? And like you kind of explained before, you're kind of like responsible for your work and the work of your board partner? Yeah,
only in that Dakota had never boarded before. Dakota was a comics artist and had done a whole bunch of amazing like 4-panel comics. It was doing daily comics for maybe I think it was like 7 years, something like that. And was an amazing writer and amazing comics person, but he had never boarded before. So I was partnered with, and I was the one that had the most board experience, I think, of the crew. So I was partnered with Dakota because I didn't have as much writing experience. So I was partnered with Dakota. He had the writing experience, way more writing experience than I had the boarding experience. And so they kind of launched us, Ryan and Thurup launched us with the idea that I would help him get his boarding skills up, and he would help me with my writing skills. So like technically I was directing Dakota, but I don't know. It just felt like a partnership. It just felt like, it just felt like we were jamming and working on something together, and that I had the title for some reason, but he was the funnier one. Yeah. So like, I guess I was kind of responsible, but it didn't really feel that way. Sure. It felt like an equal partnership.
They didn't have any kind of meetings without Dakota, or like specifically tell you like, oh, like the board should have been delivered the specific way.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. It was really like everything was communicated to Dakota and I.
Okay.
And that's the way that that was the only way that I knew, and I think Dakota knew how to run that relationship. He might tell you differently, but that was the only way that I knew how to do it. It was like, just treat it like a partnership. Like, yeah, we're both in this together. We're both kind of figuring this out as we go along. Like, but at the end of the day, like any responsibilities or anything that went badly, like was kind of, I guess, was my responsibility.
I see.
But it never actually, I don't think it actually reached that point ever. It was just like Dakota and I always felt such ownership over the episodes, and such a sense of duty to make the show as funny as possible, that it just felt like we were in it together.
Right. That's great.
Yeah, and that was board-driven show. It was terrifying.
Yeah, how was it for you? That was your first board-driven gig, right?
Yeah, it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Did you ever kind of study writing or do improv or like study any kind of comedy before going into a board-driven show?
Yeah, I had taken improv classes at the UCB in New York. Had done like long-form Herald structure.
Oh, you did? Wow, that's that's a tricky one. Okay, so you have a little bit of like a writing background through improv.
Wait, talk about that, because I think I don't know what that is. I'm sure people would want to know.
Oh, at the time, this is the UCB theater in New York. At the time, they were teaching long form herald structure, which follows the standard improv rules of like yes and figuring out the game of the scene, figuring out status, figuring out relationship, vulnerability, passion, all that kind of stuff. But the herald was a specific long form structure where you have a free form game. I think this is the way that broke down. You have a free form game at the beginning, where it's kind of like word association, and then you have 3 skits or 3 scenes with different partners. So like it'd be like 2 people and then 2 other people, then 2 other people, and then you have a kind of an intermission game, which is, I believe everybody. Oh God, I'm getting this so wrong, but I believe like everybody's kind of involved. It's kind of a free form, and then assuming that you found a gag or you found the story or you found the game in that first scene. In that first of those 3 scenes, you would repeat kind of that game. So it would be like freeform 1, 2, 3, freeform scene 1 version 2, scene 2 version 2, scene 3 version 3, freeform scene 1 version 3, scene 2 version 3, scene 3 version 3, and then a wrap up at the end. So it's like just kind of a formal structure of what long form should be.
Interesting.
And they were teaching that structure for a little bit. I'll have to look at because I'm sure that I'm getting that utterly wrong.
It's all in if anyone's like who's listening to the podcast right now is interested in learning more about UCB, they have the UCB improvisation manual that you can get pretty much anywhere, and it's really, really, really great. It kind of goes over that specific structure because there's like 2 different kind of long form structures. The first one is like having all these little skits like Jim just explained, and the other one is more like basically making up a whole theater 3-act play on the spot, which is extremely daunting and scary, and I don't know how they just get through it with a lot of practice.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, right, V? It's like you build up those skills, so it's like a different language where you're just impulsively kind of figuring it out.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that I took away, I just looked up the improv structure and I think I got it kind of okay. But the thing that I really learned, like they were really teaching a book, Truth and Comedy by Del Close, and which I found extremely inspirational because it was talking about being vulnerable up on stage and figuring out the truth of each moment and living like your emotional truth up on stage and using that for humor. And it was the first time that I had ever encountered like bringing your personal life or bringing your vulnerability to the comedy, or bringing that in a way that it was basically like it's okay to feel like an ass all the time because sometimes that's where the fun is. Follow the fun and follow the fear. Mm-hmm. And I loved that part of it because it made it a lot easier to just be vulnerable and be an idiot on stage and hopefully get a laugh.
Yeah, totally.
It was like, but it's also like the emotional experience of like comedy doesn't necessarily feel good when you're doing it. It can feel like crap and then the result is good. It makes somebody else feel good, but the emotional experience of actually making it can sometimes be terrifying, but you have to live in that fear and that truth. That's
the alchemic reaction, right? It's like you have to give part of yourself so that somebody else feels good.
Yeah. Just be an idiot. Just be an idiot. And
that's entertainment, huh?
Yeah. And sometimes it feels like crap. It feels awful.
Most of the time, yeah.
Most of the time it's just sweating panic.
It sure is.
And so I guess like do you ever like think consciously about like what you have learned in improv, like, or like do you feel like you've used some of those skills that you learned during improv, like when you were boarding on that board driven show?
I guess so. I hope so. I hope I internalize kind of the yes and the living the truth, and figuring out what Dakota and I were connecting with in a particular episode and what was exciting us about a particular episode, and figuring out if we weren't connecting to a certain episode or a certain outline, figuring out why we weren't connecting it to it, and just having an honest conversation about like, what are we not connecting to? Why are we missing this? Why is this hard for us? Mm-hmm. and being vulnerable, but also having that safe space to say like, I don't fucking know. I don't know what to do here. I do not know what to do in this beat. I don't know what to do for this story beat, and I feel like I'm like having the vulnerability to be like, I feel like I'm fucking up.
Yeah,
utterly.
The trust goes a long way in any kind of like writing situation, I've learned. Like, you have to just be capable of admitting that you don't know how to solve a problem if you're working with other people.
Yeah. Like, I know writers say it all the time, but like the bad, like when they pitch a joke, like the bad version of this is this.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
It's like you have to get permission to do the crappy version in order to get to the good version. And sometimes the crappy version works, but you don't want to feel like you're pitching the best version of it.
Well, and the bad idea can spark something in the other person. Like, countless times I've had it where I'm working with someone and like you said, it's like, okay, is there something here? And you like give the shitty, like, the bad nugget of an idea, and they're like, yeah, okay, hold on, if we change that, blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, our brains can only do so much. So it's like, you got to be able to just put stuff out there.
Yeah, and it's terrifying to say things that aren't gonna work. Like, oh god,
sure is.
And sometimes that comes down to like, sometimes for me that it came down to like just complaining of like. Sometimes it was just acknowledging the truth of like, for some reason, I hate this outline. I hate this outline for some reason. And like just being able to say that in a safe environment in order to get past the hump or the friction of working on it. Because like, it's like you can say like, I hate this outline, but you're still going to have to board it at the end of the day. You're going to still have to figure out like, what is exciting about it to the audience, or what is exciting about it to the executives. So like being able to just be honest in a safe environment, I don't know, I found extremely helpful.
What's some of your favorite like comedy stuff that you kind of inspired you, influenced you, and kind of you're hoping to live up to, I guess?
Jesus, live up to. God,
I know, but that's I like that question because I think everyone has something that they're like trying to reach,
Yeah, but that's also horrible. It's like, well, I want to be the Seinfeld of cartoons.
Sure.
Like, I don't know.
But you know what, though? Like, I feel like once I had lunch with an exec and I was just telling them, like, oh, I love Buffy so much. I wish I could write like Buffy, but I'll never be able to. And then she told me, well, don't say that, because if you say that, that means that you're already just like mentally blocking the avenue for you to just even go there. And I was like, oh, that is so true. I have to allow myself.
Don't limit yourself, V. Don't talk yourself down.
No, but it's true. You have to allow yourself to, like without being obviously conceited or anything, just like, just allow oneself.
Well, yeah, it's a
dream,
goal.
I guess. It's a goal, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I can say like, I don't know. This feels weird to even talk about. There are things that move me so heavily that I'm like, I hope something that I work on will have the same emotion, will have at least a sliver of the impact that this is having on me,
Definitely.
Like we watched Mob Psycho 100 and we're like, oh my God, this is so emotionally moving. Like I want to reach to this.
But I think that's it. I mean, that's an example. That was definitely big for me. I loved Mob Psycho. That was so like, I was like, oh my God, people are still making animation like this. I feel like I'd gotten so tired of anime, and then that one I was like, oh fuck, they really did something different here.
Even like Yuri on Ice gutted the hell out of me. Like, oh God, the way that they introduce new characters and get you to care about them so quickly and in such a deep way, for me, it may not have struck with some people, but like it gutted me, and I found it really, really inspirational. I was like, okay, God, like I hope something I can do gets even a sliver of this close.
Yeah. And
then I go back to making fart jokes and butt jokes and drawing cracks.
Makes people happy.
I hope so.
Makes kids happy for sure, probably. What was speaking of kids, like, was there something when you were a kid that really inspired you?
I wish I had a simple answer. No,
it doesn't have to be simple.
No, it wasn't as a kid. There was a girl that I had a huge crush on when I was like 19 that really liked cartoons and really liked really liked Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Laboratory. And so I, by proxy, got into Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Laboratory because, I wanted to get with her. So I found that inspirational. But then, it transitioned into like finding stuff that I really connected with, like that Mark Osborne chart, like more, or like even like Kung Fu Panda later, or or the emotional journey of some of that stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, I wish I had like I saw Bugs Bunny as a kid and I wanted to do that when I was 7, but
Sure.
I never really connected with it until I like understood myself a little bit more emotionally.
That's fine too. I mean, yeah, you figure yourself out as you go. That's just life, baby.
Yeah, I don't feel
Yeah.
like things just like change. Also, like I feel like some of the stuff that I really, really like, I don't know, we go through phases. What is that thing? What is that metaphor? It's like people are like a flame. It's like always the same, but it's always changing.
Wow.
I know,
Mhm.
right? I read all the books.
You do read all the books.
On spirituality or whatever. But I mean, I make fun of that metaphor, but I really like it too. So
Yeah, like moths to the flame, burnt by the fire. Can't you see my love? Can't you see my desire? As
Exactly.
Janet Jackson once sang.
Exactly.
That's the way love goes.
It's true.
Sorry for quoting Janet Jackson.
Where did this go? This is fun. It's Monday night and we're all just like tired.
just like, yeah.
Yeah, let's ask a question. We had a good question
Oh, sure.
from @Karo Kowalik. They were wondering your take on crunch culture and how common it is in the animation industry, and how frequently do people get burnouts, which we touched on a little bit.
Mm-hmm. This is a tough one for me as a supervisor.
Well, you mentioned that you kind of like it for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting because if that works for you, then it works for you, and if you have a way to kind of maintain that balance.
Because you can talk about it. You can talk about it for you as like an individual, as like a board artist, and you can talk about it, your philosophy as a supervisor concerning
Two
that.
different things.
So you can have like 2 answers for that same question.
Okay. Let's see. I find having fast turnarounds and fast deadlines extremely helpful in order just to keep me focused and keep me motivated and keep me on task. And just producing as much as possible, as quickly as possible in order to get it out there and at least have something to talk about. Like writers talk about having the vomit draft. Like I try to get the vomit draft of the board, so I find, or of the episode, or of the main title, or whatnot. So I find that very useful for myself to crunch as quickly as possible in order just to get it out. So at least there's something to talk about, and at least you'll have like the shape of the whole thing. As a supervisor, I try to make sure that everybody has the time that they need in order to finish, in order to get a pass on the board, in order to not be super stressed about racing or about hitting the deadline. So for me as a supervisor, I feel like it's my job to try and avoid a culture of crunch and set up everybody for success in a way that helps them feel supported, down to the schedule, down to how many board artists are on an episode, down to if somebody needs a week off because something happened that was personal, finding a way to get coverage for that person, or finding a way to help them out. If somebody has an off week, or if somebody is a little bit lighter, helping to find some support for the board artists. So I feel like it's my job as a supervisor to try and avoid a crunch culture, to try and avoid getting into problems, because like I think we're all in this industry for life, and like we talked about a little earlier, like a show can turn out horrible and you never really know. You can have the best team possible on a show, but a show can be awful at the end. And you never really know how a show is going to turn out. So the experience of making it is as important as the content of the show itself, because we're all humans. We all just want to have a good working experience, and we want to all be happy at the end of the day. And I read articles about like writing rooms like Modern Family, and I think there's an article like maybe 5-10 years ago about the Modern Family writing room, about just how well that show is run and how supported all the writers feel on that, and like how it is like a job to them. It is like a 9 to 6 writing job. But that show won, you know, a whole bunch of Emmys, and it was a great show and ran for many, many, many years. And Dave Thomas on Fairly Odd Parents talked about that too a little bit, like, you know, making sure about completing boards on time and not killing yourself. And I personally don't think that it takes crunch culture in order to make anything great. I think you can make an amazing show, and everybody can put their heart into it, and everybody can have a great time working on it, and it can be done, you know, within a 40-hour work week.
Definitely.
I agree. I feel like also, like what you were talking about, like figuring out like the different ways to give resources to the team. It's kind of something that moving to LA, I didn't realize, because like in France, like the shows are so limited in terms of resources, in terms of like budget and schedule, that it's something that was kind of new to me. But it's always kind of like something that I felt like here in LA, like if something is kind of impossible, like a deadline can't be met, or like, yeah, you have to take 2 weeks off for something personal, like people can actually, like, productions are more flexible than we think. Like freelancers are available. There's like a lot of talent in this town. So yeah, it's really, it's all about like communication, and I think that's really great as well.
Yeah, and I think it comes from the top. It comes from leadership as well. And we have an incredible EP on Big Nate that like is extremely supportive of the board artists, and knows, like, has been running shows for a number of years. And you know, I have nothing but respect for Mitch, the way that he has set this show up even before I got there. Set the show up for success, just in the way that the teams are run, and the amount of support that we have, and the scripts that are coming in. Like, that stuff is so important, and I hope that the team feels supported, because I think it's extremely important to everybody at Nickelodeon, I know, but everybody in leadership on the show, that everybody has a good time.
Yeah. We had a pretty good pipeline on Loud House, and I think that kept a lot of people there for much longer than they might have if it was a mess, you know. Like, our crew was really fucking stable for years, and eventually people just got tired of doing the same thing, you know, and so that's why a lot of people started leaving, I think. But yeah, the skip weeks that we had were like amazing. Like, the skip weeks are a thing that is like always a hard sell, I think, to any network, but it's like, hey, I know that it seems like it's wasted time, but it's not, because things always go over schedule, over deadlines, and so you have this minute to catch up, and people can rest, and it's just good to keep people's lives in mind, the work-life balance.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, like, if your artists are like burning themselves out within like 4 months, then they're not gonna be able to keep putting out good work.
Yeah, like I don't want any of our artists to burn out. Like, I love the commitment, and I love the passion in bringing so much of yourself to it. But for God's sakes, like Jim Schumann says this all the time, like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You're working on a show for a year and a half. Like, don't burn yourself out in the first 6 weeks. Take the time and take care of yourself, and, you know, get an adequate amount of sleep and exercise, and you know, eat well, because that's, like, you're a human, man.
Yeah.
You know, come on.
We are.
Yeah, it's
biological beings.
It's definitely a toxic thing where people are like, I gotta cram and like do so much shit. Like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, and it's like, okay, well,
no.
Please take care of yourself, please. No, I'm worried for you.
Yeah. What kind of goals do you have for your career, or just your life in general, kind of moving forward?
I want to be the Seinfeld of animation.
Yeah, see, there you go.
I'm sorry, stupid joke.
I liked it.
It was really good. I love running gags.
Yes, and not only Seinfeld. Yes, and I don't know. I want to create a show that puts good into the world, that everybody has a good time working on, and makes a shitload of money for the parent corporation. Yeah, that's kind of that's the thing, right? There's always that little asterisk, because it's like, let's be real, like, we're just trying to make money for people.
And you know what? I don't even find that an asterisk. fuck, cool. I want to make a ton of money for a corporation.
Yeah.
Like, cool, because that means people are watching the show, and that means that like they're selling a bunch of advertising at the upfronts, and like that people are buying consumer products. Like,
It's intertwined.
yeah, exactly. Like,
you-
cool, make a bunch of money, because that also means that like if you make a bunch of money for a corporation, for a big media company, that means that they have a lot of money to make other things. And I'm gonna die in 40, 50 years. And I hope like that the money that we make from this show or whatever show we're working on like supports artists making their own show for the next 40, 50 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it takes big media companies to do that. So like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I want to make you a lot of money, man. I want to do as much money as possible.
That's a great attitude. I think it's all intertwined, and I fully accept. I think this idea that people have of like, art is pure, and it's like I can make stuff on my own and be free from all of that. But like the audience is going to be limited no matter what, unless you're some weird freak of nature that manages to get tons of people looking at your stuff and supporting you financially. That's like so hard to come by. We're all hoping to have somebody just invest in us, and anytime that there's investing to be done, there's going to be some oversight, there's going to be some network, back and forth and compromise, but like you'll reach a wider audience, and you're going to entertain more people, and you're going to make more people happy, and so it's like can't have one without the other.
Yeah, it's like they're literally giving you millions of their dollars in order to make something. Like I understand that you want to have some oversight of that. I can I can understand. Like I understand that like you want to give notes on like it's your money. Yeah, cool.
Definitely.
Let's figure out a way to make the best creative product that we can. Meeting in the middle. But like yeah, it's your money, man.
Definitely, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a crap load of money, and it's also like other people's livelihoods. You know what I mean? Like you're in control of a whole, or not in control. You're overseeing a whole team of people that I get like ostensibly are looking to you for creative direction. And like you gotta get your shit on lock, man. You gotta build that trust.
That's an angle that I think a lot of people don't consider when they're going in and pitching shows, and they have this idea that they love, and it's been in their heads for years, and it's like that's how everything starts. But I've talked to younger artists and stuff, and I want them to know how much is under that iceberg of like just having an idea. Like the idea is just the tippity top, and then everything else is you have to consider all these factors. And if you want to be a showrunner, you got to be ready to just like take punches. You're just taking hits, and even as a soup director, even as a director, like you're just taking the hits. Like you were saying, you got to fall on the sword for anytime something goes wrong, and that takes that strong constitution. Like you got to be tough.
And I think it also, I don't know. It's also like you don't like this joke? Cool, I'll come up with another one. Yeah. You don't like this show idea? Cool, I'll come up with another one. This one isn't working for you? Oh, we took this one to development, but something happened at the end and you didn't like it? Cool, you know what? I got 10 more ideas and we can work on those together,
Yeah.
I don't know. Just coming back with a smile every single time. Like, let's do this. This one didn't work. All right, cool. Hit you on the next one. See what's up.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to plug? Anything else you want to mention?
Donate to Inner City Arts if you're interested in donating to a charity. Plug? Nah. Be excellent to each other, I guess.
That sounds good. That's a good
I'm gonna plug being cool. I don't know.
Watch Big Nate when it comes out.
Yeah, if you want to, or if you don't like it, cool. Don't. Like, it's your life, man. Live your truth. Love what you love.
Yeah, you already got paid. You're already getting paid for the work you do. You don't need to.
I've traded my time for money, and I've had a great time doing it. So I hope you like it. Yeah, exactly.
The exchange has happened. Well, that's the end of this creative block. Thanks to Jim for being our guest and sharing his story.
And thanks to our listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Blog, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to my sister Clemens for editing the podcast.
Please subscribe to the channel if you love our content. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was V. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.